We're reminded of the, reality impinges every so often. It used to happen at Alchemy as well, in Camden Market. We were next to the train line, and every so often a train came. I found it was quite relevant somehow. So we may get that. I always like to begin with some chanting. On the back of this booklet you will see a few mantras. The first one is expressing gratitude to Mother Earth. This is a tradition, it's a very ancient mantra actually. It's a traditional mantra that is recited early in the morning before you begin your worship, which may be meditation, it may be some other kind of puja. It's asking for the benediction of Mother Earth before I sit on you. And so it includes, you might see in the last line, Pavitram Chasanam Kuru. That's that word asana, which is used in yoga for, the posture. Actually it means the sitting posture, that's what it means. It means the place to sit. And so the last line is, please, Pavitram, purify this seat, make it pure. Kuru means make this seat, this place where we are sitting, sanctified. So this prayer is asking Mother Earth, one of whose names is Prithvi, Prithvi Tvaya Drita Loka. O Goddess, Mother Earth, you look after all beings in the world. Not just the humans, all the beings, they're under your protection. Devi, O Goddess, Tvam Vishnuna Drita. Goddess, you might have heard the name Gaia, which is the Greek name for Gaia is the Greek name for the Mother Earth. The Latin name is Terra, T-E-R-R-A. Terra doesn't just mean the ground, the earth, the substance. It's actually the name for the goddess. That in Roman times, they understood she's a goddess, just as the Greeks did. So when we use the name, the word earth in English, it refers to the substance, but it also refers to the planet. And that was also the case in Sanskrit. Bhumi is the word for the substance, and it's also the word for the goddess, Bhumi. And it seems to me that's a very fundamental, relationship which we all have. Have you got one of the booklets?
No. Here.
There should be one for you.
Thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
We all have a fundamental relationship with Mother Earth, and I think it's expressed at its most basic level in the attraction of gravity. I was thinking about this, and scientists have no definition. They cannot actually explain what gravity is. How it works. There is no scientific equation or anything that explains gravity. I heard this from the most erudite contemporary experts in the field of physics. They say no, actually we don't really know what this force is. It's just one of those forces that exist which we don't know what it is. And I think gravity is it's an attraction. It's like love, because we're all in love with the earth, and that love is the most powerful force in life, and that's what keeps us, holds us, attracts us to one another, attracts us to Mother Earth, and attracts the earth to the sun, the moon to the earth, and that holds all these vast planets and entities floating in space. They're held by the power of love. That's my vision. I can't think of any reason why that shouldn't be the case. We just don't understand it. So the Gita is exploring things that seem, I suppose, obvious You know, gravity seems obvious, but what is it actually? And similarly in the Gita, you know, asking questions, what really is this existence that we're in the midst of? So the prayer goes, Goddess, Devi, Tvam Vishnu Nadrita, you are, just as you are maintaining us, you yourself are maintained by Vishnu. There is another greater being, far, far greater than you, who is maintaining you and all the other heavenly bodies. Tvam cha dharaya mam nityam. You, this is very personal now, you are maintaining me. Personally, mam means me. Nityam, perpetually. Throughout day and night. When I'm asleep and I'm not conscious or aware of it, you're looking after me. When I'm old and sick, or if I'm a young child, you are looking after me at all times. And there is this, in the Gita, we come across this understanding that, you know, we are all constantly being protected and looked after, even though we're not aware of it. So I like to begin with that prayer, and we'll sing it in a minute. And then the second mantra, or the second prayer, is one some of you might be familiar with. It's one of the verses from the quite a long hymn of praise to the Guru. Om is simply the invocation. Agyana timirandasya. From ignorance, or from the ignorance, I was blinded by ignorance. Timirandasya. I could not see. Gyananjana shalakaya. You gave me the shalakaya as the ointment of wisdom. Chakshuran militam yena, and you opened my eyes with that ointment of wisdom. Anjana means eyes, and shalakaya is the ointment of gyan, of wisdom. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. I offer my respects to the teachers, generations of teachers and their sacred writings which are collected in the sacred books of the world, that we all profit from. Do come in and sit down. Yeah. Is there any more of the booklets, or have we run out now?
Run out.
Oh, yeah, you can look at that one. Thank you. So we're going to begin by singing these two mantras at the top of the page, at the back there. And by the way, just perhaps before we start, can each person introduce themselves to the group? My name is Ranchor, which is a name I was given when I was 20 years old. Yeah, it's the name of Krishna, and I've kept it ever since.
Hi, I'm Ashi, Hare Krishna. I'm a writer. Are we meant to say a bit about ourselves?
You can say a sentence or two.
Okay, I'm a writer, and thank you for having us here.
Hi, I'm Annapurna. I did the integral teacher training with a few others in England, so last December.
Kashi, I'm an integral yoga teacher and one of the coordinators of the Integral Yoga Centre London.
I'm Karuna. I'm also one of the coordinators of Integral Yoga Centre London, and I'm also an integral yoga teacher.
I'm Satya. I'm an integral yoga teacher.
I'm Nick. I'm a writer, speaker, coach, mentor, community creator, all sorts of things.
Hi, I'm Maha. I'm also a yoga teacher and also helping to organize this. And also artist, massage therapist. Thank you.
I'm Carmen, and I did the integral yoga teacher training recently. I haven't started using my spiritual name really, but I guess I could start now. I was given the spiritual name Shivani.
I'm Suma Devi, and I also did the integral yoga teacher training, and past, and I teach sometimes. And I'm also a florist. Thank you.
And I'm Uma. I did
Sorry?
Uma, the integral yoga teaching as well, a couple of years ago. Teaching on and off, but have moved a bit further from London now, and I've then had the occasion to come here, and I feel it's so nice to be back.
You made it through the rain.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm in the company of a room full of teachers.
I think I'm here to receive a lesson today.
Yeah, even if, yeah, anyway, teaching, and I always think teaching is learning, and learning is teaching, it's the same thing. Well, let's begin with singing these two mantras. And we'll start with chanting the great mantra, Om. Close your eyes. Draw your attention to that place inside where your consciousness resides. Feel your breath. Allow your breath to deepen. Take a deep breath. Oh, thank you for that beautiful singing. The Gita, Bhagavad Gita, the word Gita means song. So it's not actually a book. It's a song, a collection of 700 mantras, Bhagavad Gita. And the word Bhagavad is another form of the word Bhagavan, which means the Supreme Being, the Blessed One. So the Gita is the song of the Blessed One, and it is my firm realization that this song goes on inside the heart of every one of us, actually, in many different ways. This divine song, and the task of the teacher, and in the Gita the teacher is Krishna, is to connect the student with that inner voice which we all have. And when what I hear from outside is confirmed by the voice within, that is education, that is the real meaning of learning, to connect with that inner voice of wisdom. Well, this booklet which I made for, we taught 6 sessions here. Lavanya, you were at some of them, weren't you? Most of them, in fact. Yeah. Which were intended to be the first of 3 series. We only got to the end of the first one. So there are 6 topics which comprise 1/3 of the Gita, but there's more than enough to occupy us today to just dip into some of this. And this, this learning process which I'm speaking of, connecting with the inner voice, it begins where the Gita begins. One of the things that makes the Gita very memorable is the context in which the teaching occurs. Krishna and his friend Arjun are lifelong friends. They grew up together, and they find themselves on the threshold of a great disastrous military confrontation. It was a conflict that had almost been inevitable practically from the beginning of Arjun's life. Events moved inexorably towards this great conflict, and that story is told in the Mahabharata, the great epic of ancient India. Krishna in the Mahabharata is a sort of an enigmatic figure who sometimes appears and then he disappears and then again he comes, and he does not involve himself directly in what's going on, but he tries to help to bring some reconciliation. But no reconciliation comes. So finally, at the beginning of the Gita, I've got put here the opening verse of the Gita. It has this symbolism of being the opening verse. It's a question. The question is asked by the king, whose name is Dhritarashtra. Now he's elderly and he's blind and he's incapable of ruling. So he's not on the battlefield. But he's desperately concerned because on the battlefield are all his sons ready to fight their cousins. And everyone knows this will be a fight to death. So Dhritarashtra asks the question, Dhritarashtra uvacha, he spoke, Dharma kshetre, Kuru kshetre. This kshetra means field, and Dharma kshetra means the holy field, a place of pilgrimage that has been chosen for this meeting or this battle. It's called Kurukshetra, the field of the Kurus. The Kurus are the name of the dynasty who are about to fight. There on the battlefield, this sacred place which ourselves and our ancestors have been to on pilgrimage since time immemorial, now we are preparing to kill ourselves. Everyone's going to fight to the death. Tell me, he's turning to his advisor, to his assistant, whose name is Sanjaya. What's happening there? I'm desperate to know. And he's blind. Without anyone to guide him, he can't know anything. And Sanjaya, who's sitting with Dhritarashtra far away from the battle, by mystic power, he is able to see and hear everything that's happening. And so the story then unfolds. He says, yes, I can see on the battlefield there is Krishna, and he is driving the chariot of Arjun, and your sons are ranged in formation, and opposite them are their cousins, Arjun and his brothers, in formation, getting ready to fight. But before the fight begins, I see Arjun says to Krishna, bring my chariot to the middle, Krishna, before we start this terrible fight. I want to see who's here and who it is that I'm going to be fighting with. So Krishna, obedient to his friend's request, he takes the chariot to the middle. And that image of Krishna on the chariot, actually it's on the front of this in artistic form. You see the chariot drawn by 4 horses, and the warrior Arjun is standing tall with his bow, ready to enter battle. And in front of him, sitting as his chariot driver, like a menial position, is Krishna, ready to fulfill whatever he requests. There's a very powerful symbolism there, which is not accidental. It's profound symbol of how each and every one of us, we enter this world with so many plans and wishes and desires, like the warrior carrying his bow, and our wishes can only be fulfilled by the divine will. This is what we learn in the Gita, that I fulfill your desires, whatever it is you wish. Krishna says, I fulfill. So I see that Krishna has taken the chariot to the middle, and Arjuna is looking and he's seeing everyone he ever loved, his brothers, his teachers, his uncles, his cousins, his friends, and they're all there waiting to kill one another, and he becomes completely overwhelmed. He starts to shake. In the Sanskrit poem we're told that he was shaking so much, with so much fear, he dropped his bow, he began weeping, and his hair stood on end at the prospect of what they were all going to do. And this is the crucial moment when, in the 2nd chapter of the Gita, then Arjuna turns to Krishna. And this 3rd verse here that's on page 2. The Sanskrit's a little complicated, but I think it's worth trying to sing it, because it's the key moment. It's the moment when, the actor, the warrior, who stands for us all, is overwhelmed and cannot see actually how I should act, or I don't even have even if I could see how I should act, I don't have the strength to do it. I feel my strength leaving me. We've all had these moments. And sometimes they can be so powerful, they can stop a person in your tracks. And all of a sudden your whole life can just seem to fragment. It happens from time to time in all of our lives. So this is the moment where the Gita really begins. Karpanya dosho pahata swabhava. The Sanskrit is a little complicated because this is a poem, and it's exactly vocalizing what that moment is. It's this moment of just complete being overwhelmed by the complexity and the fear. I'm confused what I should do. I'm overwhelmed with fear and weakness. Yashreyashan nishchitam bruhitam me. I've lost all faith in everything. Shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapanam. I am therefore begging you. Shishya actually means disciple. Shishya. Krishna and Arjuna have been friends all their lives, but Arjuna says to Krishna, now I am your disciple. Please teach me, show me what I should do. Tvam prapannam, I surrender to you. Prapanna means to. So it's that moment of letting go and of realizing that alone I cannot solve this, dilemma. So I'm going to sing each of these lines and see if you can repeat behind me. The Sanskrit is such that, it's a sacred language. Ultimately, I believe all language is sacred. But Sanskrit has been used so much and so specifically for describing the sacred experience, and it encodes so much truth. It's such an ancient language that it has a special power, and these words, by chanting these mantras, intuitively we can, although this verse doesn't fit the traditional tune. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. Prishami tvam dharma samudhachita. Prishami tvam dharma samudhachita. Yashreyasyan nishchitam bruhitam me. Yashreyasyan nishchitam bruhitam me. Shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapanam. Shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapanam. I'm confused about my duty and overwhelmed with fear and weakness. I surrender to you as your disciple and beg you, teach me what is best for me. Anyone wish to make a comment at this point? We're finished. We'll pause at the end of each of these sections. You're all people who think deeply about life, obviously. Does anyone feel something has stood out so far about this, what we've been discussing?
I've not been in them, but I understand in recovery programs there comes a time when you realise you have to surrender to a higher power, you can't solve your own problems.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it kind of reflects that kind of
I think it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's like your thinking created the problem and you need a higher thinking to solve that.
Yes. Yeah. Sort of letting go of the mind. Yeah.
Letting go of ego thinking and allowing higher thinking.
Anything else?
Yeah, I also think, everybody comes in everybody's life to you come to a certain point. You say, "Oh no, I don't know. It's too much. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. I don't see the way out.
Yeah.
How can I continue? I don't know. Help me. So I think this is nothing new. We heard this before. Somewhere.
Yeah. Has anyone in this room had such a moment?
Every day.
Yeah. So these moments are actually great blessings. I think sometimes, from another sort of perspective, that the world as a whole is very much facing a dilemma of massive proportions. And this, during the lives that, the time that we're living in, is such a time where we're rapidly coming to the point we're just running out of ideas, and some of us perhaps are more aware of that than others. So that's why the Gita perhaps speaks at this time very powerfully to not just to each of us as individuals, but to the world in general. Well, yeah, that's when the teaching begins. So let's look at how in the second chapter the teaching starts to unfold. And well, we'll sing the next verse, which is on this sheet, which is the 12th verse of the second chapter. Never a time. Na tvevaham jatu nasam. Never was there a time when you did not exist. Na tvam neme janadipa. Either you or any of the people here, these great warriors all assembled on this battlefield, there was never a time when any of us did not exist. Na chaiva, na bhavishyama, and neither will there ever be a time when we will not exist. Sarve vayam ataparam. All these people here exist forever. So let's sing that Sanskrit. And this we can sing to the traditional tune of the Gita. Natvevaham jatunasam. Natvevaham jatunasam. Natvam neme janadipa. Natvam neme janadipa. Nachaiva na bhavishyama. Sarve vayam matapayam. Sarve vayam matapayam. There was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these warriors, nor will there be a time when any of us shall not exist. It's very much as you just said, Nick, about, you can't solve the problem at the level that it's created. This dilemma which we're all faced with, which in a nutshell you could say is birth, disease, old age and death, in its multiple forms that we all face, it can't be solved from the plane of mortal existence. It can't be, because we ourselves are not mortal beings, Krishna is saying. We're all eternal beings. You're so concerned, Arjun, about how everyone's going to die here. Actually, no one's going to die. That's what Krishna begins by saying. It's very radical, actually. No one here is going to die. You might think you're going to kill people, or people are going to be killed. It's not going to happen. And he goes on to say that, the soul, not only the soul doesn't die, the soul cannot be harmed in any way. The soul, he doesn't use the word soul. In the next verse, it begins with the Sanskrit word dehina. Dehina means that one that inhabits this body, whatever it is. At this stage in the Gita, is like any divine message. It is intuitively wise and perfectly formed. Sacred wisdom, when it makes its appearance, it doesn't need to conform to rational structures. It just automatically, the right things come at the right time. When sacred words are spoken in sacred consciousness, the perfect words come. So the Gita is perfectly formed, that it begins in the beginning. And there's at this point, no definition is offered what this is that's inside this body, other than to say it's eternal. It has no beginning and it has no end. Dehina, the one who's inside. And Krishna says, whatever this is, it cannot be harmed. It can't be, and he lists, the different elements. It can't be cut by steel or by earth. It can't be moistened by water. It can't be burned by fire. It can't be withered by the wind or the air. So we've got earth, water, fire, air, cannot touch it. Because it's beyond those elements. We are that which is beyond this visible, physical substance. And then the next verse here, Dehino Shminjata Dehe, this self, this one that is inside this body, Dehe, in the body. Kaumaram Yovanam Jara, from childhood to youth. Yovana means youth, and like many words in Sanskrit, it's a little similar to the English word, Yovana and youth. And Jara is old age, so we all experience childhood, youth, old age. Tatade Huntara Praptir, and at the end of life, this one inside the body leaves this body and enters another one. That other body that we enter, it may be like this one, made of earth, fire, water and air, or it may be made of the subtle elements that are beyond. In the Sanskrit philosophy, there are 8 elements. There are the 4 that we can see, earth, water, fire, or feel at least, earth, water, fire and air. Air we can't actually see, but we can feel it. And then there are 4 more elements, which are ether, mind, wisdom and ego. And altogether these 8 make up the whole manifestation of the cosmos. So the body may be, the next body may be a physical body of earth, water, fire and air, or it may be a more subtle body, in the higher realms, the more subtle realms of ether. Or ether is in Sanskrit called Akash. You may be familiar with that word, Akash. It means ether. And interestingly, in India, the national, their equivalent to the BBC, what's it called in India? It's called, and it includes the word Akash.
Akashvani.
Akashvani.
I think so.
Yeah. Because it's understood that, the radio signals are transmitted through the ether. Sound travels through the ether. So whatever the next body will be, when I leave this one, I go into another body. And that's teaching is, this is really the only mention, this and one other verse in the Gita, of reincarnation, but it's such a fundamental teaching, isn't it? So it's worth just dwelling on this one. Let's sing this. Dehi noshmin yata dehi Komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara prapti Dhiras tatra namuhyati. The last line means muhyati means to be bewildered, to be deluded, and dhira is the word for the person who is steady in wisdom. The dhira, at the time of leaving this body, does not become bewildered. Everyone is bewildered at death, but not the one who knows that I am not this body, I am something beyond this. Death is actually, there is no death, it's simply a transition. And it's possible to be completely free from fear of death by practice of, just by living my life on this basis of understanding that I'm an eternal being. Dehi nosmin yata dehi Dehi nosmin yata dehi Komalam yovanam jara Komalam yovanam jara Tata vihantara prapti As the self moves in this body from childhood to youth to old age, so it passes into another body at death. The wise are not confused by this change. And then right after that, Krishna then says, very next verse, don't be disturbed by the happiness and the distress of this world. These arise from, they appear and they disappear like winter and summer, and these feelings arise from the perceptions of the senses. And in the yoga point of view, the senses include the mind. The suffering of the mind, the suffering of the body, it's all part of the same experience. Just try to tolerate. Titikshu means tolerance, to tolerate, to be patient. Just try to tolerate this. This is again, Nick, you mentioned the deep work that people do to overcome addictions and so on, and the 12-step and so on, that process. In the course of life, sooner or later, we all come up against these, tremendous challenges to my peace of mind. Ultimately, we have to try and learn to tolerate. And if I don't learn that, the lesson is repeated over and over and over. The lesson is repeated. Each day the sun rises, another day the sun sets, the same lessons are repeated over and over and over, until what happens, after years and years and decades and perhaps, of life, I just start to learn to tolerate, because there's nothing else I can do. So that's what Krishna teaches right after teaching. These 3 verses are consecutive in the 2nd chapter. everyone here is eternal. At the end of life, you will pass into another body. Try to tolerate the ups and downs of life. It's a different point of view entirely. In other words, we're not going to solve this problem. You know, this battle at the end of this whole teaching of the Gita, the battle goes on, actually. It all happens, it all goes ahead. Arjuna has to fight. But his mentality has completely changed because it's become one of acceptance, and that is, you know, the whole state of mind of yoga, to live in acceptance. So that's the radical shift in perspective that begins the teaching. That I'm not here I can't escape death, and actually I'm not dying anyway. I'm an eternal being. Any comments, thoughts on that?
Is that when we did the sutras in our literary training, there was something Pratipakshabhavanam. Pratipakshabhavanam, which is when you're kind of turning a negative to a positive. You're trying to take your ego out of a situation and see it on a bigger picture. So when you can pull the ego, the I, and Swami Satchidananda says from I-ness to we-ness. So it's a kind of that sort of flavour, that to get ourselves and this belief that we exist only in our bodies out of the way, and to see but seeing the bigger picture, and accept from that place a kind of acceptance comes. But it's that you have to kind of make that shift. So it sounds quite similar. That's how I'm following it and understanding it. So.
Yeah, the Gita, you know, one of the possibilities that Arjuna says to Krishna right at the beginning, he says, I feel inclined to just leave. I'm not going to fight in this battle. I'm going to go to the forest. As he says that. You know, let me just give this up, and I'll live by begging. But at the end, Krishna does not accept that actually. He says, no. You have to accept what you're given, but change your state of mind. Exactly, change the consciousness. Yeah. So next comes this section, Power of the Senses. Of course, there are many things we could choose, but this is in the same second chapter. Krishna speaks a bit more about, you know, the dilemma, because, okay, so accepting that this body must die, and accepting that I, the one inside this body, am an eternal being. It's a dilemma, because although I'm an eternal being, I'm having to live out, you know, this role. We're all living, we're like actors, you know, who have put on the costume and are actually thinking, I am the character. And forgetting that, no, I'm not the character, I'm just playing a role. But if I think I am the character and I identify with all the, you know, the dilemmas and the adventures and the stories, of course my life becomes very difficult. But I suppose in one sense the dilemma is that without a certain amount of identification, I will do what Arjuna says. I'll just leave and go to the forest. What's the point? And of course we're going to look at that next, but before we do, just dwelling on the dilemma of what it's like to be alive. I always think to myself, I think that every one of us in this world, we're all heroes, because we're experiencing such conflict at every moment, between my inner nature, which is to be this eternal being, beyond birth and death, and still having to enact this, live in a world, where I have to constantly struggle and so on. So I just want to share with you, these few verses here that just speak about this dilemma, which is very well summed up in a verse in the 5th chapter, which I've called the sources of misery. That Yehi sangsparsaja bhoga, these pleasures which arise from the contact of the senses with the objects of the senses. The Sanskrit word sparsa means touch. So when my senses, which includes my mind, contact the surrounding objects of the senses, there is a certain pleasure to be had. And we all sort of can't help it. We're drawn to that pleasure, unfortunately like moths to a flame, but we are. And so Krishna says, this pleasure, bhoga is the Sanskrit word for pleasure, enjoyment. This pleasure that arises from the senses, contacting the objects of the senses, dukkha yonaya evate. Dukkha means misery. And yoni, you may know that word. Yoni means the womb, the source of birth. This apparent pleasure, it brings misery. It's a rather bleak reminder, that what we suffer in this world is generally the consequence of chasing the pleasure. Did someone laugh?
It's a contradiction.
That's the dilemma, I remember when my son was about 4 years old, sometimes children come up with these gems. He said to his mother, he said, "Mummy, why is it so easy to be bad? So hard to be good." It's just so natural, that we want to chase the pleasure, but we get pain. And so then Krishna says, Adhyantavanta, these experiences, they have a beginning and an end. So even though, yes, I may get some pleasure, but it ends quickly, and it turns to pain. Nateshu ramate buddha. Therefore, the wise person who is called Buddha, Buddhi, the one who's wise, does not take pleasure in seeking these things. So I'm praying that I will become wise one day. Like St. Augustine prayed, "Oh Lord, make me good, but not yet." Yeah. So that's the dilemma that we all experience in this world, and it's so vividly described in these next 2 verses, which are in the second part, in the 2nd chapter, in the beginning of the Gita. The downward spiral of how, I'll just read the English to you. While dwelling on the objects of the senses, right, you develop attachment for them. From attachment grows desire, and from desire arises anger. From anger produces illusion, and from illusion comes forgetfulness. Forgetfulness destroys your intelligence, and when intelligence is gone, you are lost. It's quite heavy, actually, isn't it? Pretty heavy, I find. It's sort of, I don't know how anyone feels when you hear that. Let me read it again. While dwelling on the objects of the senses, you develop attachment for them. From attachment grows desire, and from desire arises anger. Anger produces illusion, and from illusion comes forgetfulness. Forgetfulness destroys your intelligence, and when intelligence is gone, you are lost. How does that make you feel? Anyone?
It's depressive, you know.
Pardon me?
Halfway to being lost.
Halfway to being lost. Halfway, yeah. It's heavy.
Yeah, it's depressive, you know. And then what? So how do you find a way out?
Did you say depressing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're depressive. You know?
Well, I mean, perhaps you've noticed, I'm sure some of you have noticed, that, periods of depression can actually be quite enlightening. When I come up just against a brick wall and I can't see any way around it, it's a very depressing experience. But from that depression, I'm forced back on myself, to try to, I don't know, seek inspiration in the end. And it comes, eventually, one way or another. This is the dilemma that we all face as embodied spirits living in this world. So I've just tagged on, the verse that comes right before that, the higher taste, Vishaya, Vinivartante. You could try to give up seeking these external pleasures. We've all tried one way or another, I'm sure. I mean, the most basic thing I think a lot of people have to do is they try to give up smoking. I tried for a few years when I was a teenager, and I could never give it up actually, until I was lucky. When I was 20, I discovered yoga and chanting, singing, filled my life with so much satisfaction. So Krishna says here that you can try to give up these external pleasures, but still the desire is there. Another thing in the Gita that Krishna says, if you do give up, but you're still desiring, you're deluding yourself. Sooner or later, that desire will emerge. So the best advice, he says here, is these desires can be overcome only by finding a higher source of pleasure, by finding a higher satisfaction. Param Drishtva, it literally means, Param means higher pleasure, tasting a higher reality, which is really what yoga, is intended to do. It's intended to introduce me to a higher, or you could say a deeper source of satisfaction, which requires little work, but in the end it brings a deeper happiness. So that's more about, the dilemma of that we're all facing, of being a spirit in the material world. There was a song, wasn't there, once? I don't know if anyone remembers that. Spirits in the material world. Yeah. Yeah. One of my great heroes is George Harrison, of course, because he loved Krishna, and he wrote so many amazing songs. When he discovered Krishna, he was still a member of the Beatles, and he couldn't really express himself in the required, they allowed him one track per album, the other two, Lennon and McCartney, they only allowed George one track per album. So after the Beatles broke up, he had all these songs that were just spilling out, and the second album he did after that he called it Living in the Material World. It's a great title, I think. Living in the material world. It's that dilemma of we are here, and we can't. There's no point in trying to run away from it. So how do I live in this world? And that's the the next topic of discussion in the second and mainly the third chapter of the Gita. And it's one of the topics that the Gita is well known for, really, I think, is karma yoga. The art of selfless action. So that's summarized, really, or one of the verses that summarizes it is this verse 48. Let's sing this verse. Yogastha kuru karmani. Do your work in this world with a spirit of detachment. Sangam Chaktva Dhananjaya. Being equal, Dhananjaya is a name for Arjuna. Being equal in your mind to Siddhya Siddhyo. Siddhi means perfection and Asiddhi means imperfection. So be equal to success or failure. We'll all encounter a measure of both. And that's part of what we're here to experience. Success and failure will come. Be equal to those. And then finally, Samatvam Yoga Uchite. This is what is called yoga. That's the definition of yoga, or one of the yoga has many definitions, but that's a definition of yoga, is to live in this spirit of detachment, being willing to contemplate success and failure, which was it Rudyard Kipling in his famous poem If, he called them imposters. Success and failure are imposters. It's not actually success or failure. It's the trying that counts, something like that. So let's sing this verse after me. Yogastha kuru karmani. Yogastha kuru karmani. Sangam Chaktva Dhananjaya. Sangam Chaktva Dhananjaya. Siddhya Siddhyo Samudva. Siddhya Siddhyo Samudva. Samatvam Yoga Uchite. Samatvam Yoga Uchite. Yogastha kuru karmani. Yogastha kuru karmani. Sangam Chaktva Dhananjaya. Sangam Chaktva Dhananjaya. Samat Siddhya Siddhyo Samudva. Siddhya Siddhyo Samudva. Samatvam Yoga Uchite. Samatvam Yoga Uchite. So according to this teaching, there's many silent yogis in our midst. People who just live in a spirit of detachment, who don't get upset with success or failure. We don't hear about these people, but they're everywhere, who just learn to be patient, to tolerate. This is, Krishna says, this is the hallmark, really, of selfless action, one of the hallmarks. I work with detachment for the sake of the work itself, actually. There was a famous book, I can't remember the author now, Nick, you might know this book, it's called Flow. Flow, The Art of Happiness.
Is that Hungarian?
Pardon me?
Is that with Hungarian?
Yes,
guy with a long
that's
name?
right. Yeah.
Mikhail something.
Yeah, that's you got it. You got it. It's such an interesting book. It's about he just analysed what is it that the secret of being happy, in your work, is actually just to be absorbed in the actual work itself. It could be really simple work, but just absorbing yourself in doing the work for the sake of doing the work best you can, and not being too attached to success or failure, but just doing your best you can. And in fact, it's one of the best pieces of advice I could give to anyone. Just try your best. You can't do better than that. So work with a spirit of detachment. And then in this third chapter, there's a wonderful sequence of teaching where Krishna says, look at me. He says, I'm always working. I'm always working to maintain everyone. At the beginning, we sang that verse, that prayer to Mother Earth. You're looking after us. Vishnu's looking after you. So Krishna says, at this point in the Gita, these first 6 chapters of the Gita, there's 18 chapters in the Gita. Krishna doesn't speak much about his divinity. It comes up a little bit, but mostly he doesn't talk much about it. That comes in the middle part of the Gita. But here's just a hint of it. He says, look at me. I'm maintaining everything. And he said, if I stop working, even for a moment, everything would collapse. Wow. The whole of life would cease to be. And I think, I don't have much knowledge of science, but I think of, these forces like gravity, like that force that holds the atoms together, the nucleus, this force, yeah?
Is it centrifugal?
Pardon me?
Centripetal. Centripetal is when it comes together. Centrifugal is when it goes out.
It goes out, yeah.
Centripetal.
Right. Well, somehow, there are these invisible forces that hold everything in place. And if those weren't there, so I think of that, I think somehow, yes, there is this invisible presence, this divine presence, I see it. I've always felt that all my life, this kind of intuitive, this divine presence. Not everyone sees it or feels it, but if that were not there. So Krishna's saying, if I stop working for a moment, everything will collapse. He says, look at me. I'm working for the benefit of others. You do the same. Because we are all fragments of the divine, In the Gita, there's essentially in the Gita, very interestingly, the word for this one that's embodied inside the body. In the beginning, there's no word, but gradually the word emerges, and the word is one of the words, at least, is Atma. This word comes up, Atma, which is variously translated as the self, really, the self. And sometimes that word Atma is used to describe the individual, like Arjuna, like the yogi, the one who's on the path. And sometimes that word is used to describe the divine, supreme sort of being that pervades all. And the same word is used for both, which I think is very...
So is that Paramatma?
Sometimes it's, well, yes. Yes. Paramatma, which means the supreme self, and sometimes just Atma itself is used to describe God, or so there is this, we're of the same nature. That's essentially how I understand. There's you can't draw a line and say on this side is me and on that side is God. We're of the same nature. So Krishna says, I am working for the benefit of the whole world. The whole vast cosmos, or the multiple cosmoses, infinite numbers of cosmoses, which are described in the Vedas, by the way. The Vedic wisdom of ancient times described the vastness of this universe, and then says, but there are unlimited universes. which are just like tiny mustard seeds. That's the image we're given. Like a sack of mustard seeds, if you can imagine. A mustard seed is very tiny. A sack of mustard seeds would be millions of mustard seeds. And so imagine, you know, just a vast amount of mustard seeds. So all the universes together are like that. So vast. And that's all being maintained by this divine being, this divine presence. So, but we are of the same nature, Krishna says in this verse here. Shakta karmani avidvamso yata kurvanti bharata. As the ignorant act for themselves. Well, yes. If I don't know any better, I might just act for myself. But so the wise should act selflessly for the benefit of the world. Loka sangraham means, you know, for the benefit of everyone. And I think that's a great inspiration. You know, if I'm seeking to practice this art of selfless action, I could dedicate my work, whatever work, small or large, for the benefit of others in some way or form. And that's one way of understanding how I could practice detachment. In the same way that the Supreme lives with, you know, for the sake of others. Actually, happiness, you know, if I chase happiness for myself, we all know this, that doesn't bring me happiness. But when I work for the happiness of others, I can find happiness. Yeah? So let's sing that verse 325, detachment. Shakta karmani avidvam, so working the ones who are ignorant, just as they work with attachment. Shakta karmani means working with attachment. Yata kurvanti, so you also work, but you work without attachment, tata shaktas, without being attached, and instead dedicate your work for the benefit of everyone. Shaktar karmanya vidvamso, Shaktar karmanya vidvamso, Yatar kurvanti bharata, Yatar kurvanti bharata, Kuryat vidvamstata shaktas, Kuryat vidvamstata shaktas, Chikeshu loka sangraham, Chikeshu loka sangraham. As the ignorant act for themselves, so the wise should also act, but selflessly, for the benefit of the world. Well, I'm going to move ahead a bit now, and I'm going to move to the last section on the back of the book. Not the back, sorry, not my book's missing. Okay. Section number 8. There can be no spiritual failure. You know, Krishna goes on, there are six chapters in the first part of the Gita where he systematically explains yoga. And the 5th and 6th chapters he speaks a lot about meditation, he speaks about following your breathing, stilling your breathing, going to a solitary place and meditating. And anyway, after describing some of these things, and he tells Arjuna, you know, you've got to restrain your senses, become celibate, go and live in the jungle, and do some very difficult things. Arjuna, who is kind of like although he's a warrior, but in a way he's a sort of everyman. I mean, he's engaged with the world, right? So he turns to Krishna and he says, what you're telling me sounds very difficult. I don't know how I'm going to do this. He says, just like the mind, I can't remember if it's Arjuna or Krishna says it, but he says the mind is very difficult to control. Krishna says it, yeah. Like the wind, trying to control the wind, it can't be done. That's what I think it's Arjuna says that. I can't do this practice. So then there's this beautiful passage at the end of the 6th chapter where Krishna encourages Arjuna that yes, it's hard, but still try, keep trying, because on this path there can be no failure, and that's really what this passage is. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, this is the 40th verse of the 6th chapter here on section number 8. A person of faith is not lost in this world or the next. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Whatever that word means, evil. It cannot overcome a person of faith. You know, if I endeavour to do the right thing, if I try to work for the benefit of others and also for the benefit of my own eternal self, I would never be overcome by misfortune, by evil. Krishna encourages him that way. You know, you won't be lost, even if it appears sometimes. You know, failure and success and failure, if it appears that my efforts bring failure, which sometimes they will. But Krishna says there is no loss if you strive in this way. And he goes on to tell Arjuna that, actually I want to read the section what Arjuna says here in the 6th chapter. First of all he says to Krishna, this yoga of equanimity, of being detached, being equal, that you have taught seems unendurable for the restless mind. For the mind is turbulent, strong and obstinate, Krishna, and to subdue it is as difficult as controlling the wind. To which Krishna says, yes, it is difficult, but it can be done. Just keep trying. But Arjuna's not satisfied. So he goes on and he says, Krishna, what is the fate of the person who sets out on this path of yoga with faith, but who loses determination and falls away, failing to achieve success? And this happens. You know, we set out, we seek with the highest intentions, we try on this path, and sometimes we encounter failure. Arjuna says, is not such a person bewildered on the path to transcendence, lost to either world? That is to say, you know, I give up, I don't know, the pursuit of material success for the sake of the spiritual path, and I don't achieve spiritual success either. So is not such a person lost to either world, like a fragment of cloud that evaporates in the vastness of the sky? You know, just dissolves into nothing. This is my doubt, Krishna, and you are the only one who can remove it. Please dispel this doubt completely. when I was a young man, my father once told, he was a religious man, and he died when I was quite young, but before he died he said once to me, I had already chosen yoga, and he didn't agree with my choice at all, but he understood that I was seeking something spiritual. He said to me, you know, Richard, that was my Christian name, one day, he said, you will lose your faith. It happens to everyone. He said, even the great saints, he was a Catholic man, he said, even the great saints, they lost their faith. It happens to everyone. But when it happens, he said, don't worry, it will come back. It will come back. You know, when we're navigating the difficulties of living in this world, there are times when it just feels like, yeah, everything's lost. So Arjuna says to Krishna, this is my doubt, Krishna, and you are the only one who can remove it. Please dispel this doubt completely. And so here's what Krishna says. A person of faith, and we just read that verse, a person of faith is not lost in this world or the next. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. And then he explains how, you know, if you start out on this path of yoga, there will be endless rewards. I mean, I suppose in a way it sounds perhaps a bit mundane to say it, but he says this. He says, one who falls from the path of yoga enjoys countless years in the heavens of the pious, and is then born again on earth. So, you know, in the Vedic cosmos, there are many realms for rebirth. As I said earlier, being reborn into another body doesn't necessarily mean on this earth. It could mean in any of the different realms, both lower and higher, that are described, that can be in whatever you can imagine, basically. Whatever we could imagine. There are so many levels of existence, and there are so many invisible beings who are helping to maintain the universe and helping us in so many ways, angels and demigods and divine nature spirits, goodness knows. So Krishna says that, you know, you will be, after you take this path of yoga, you will certainly gain tremendous rewards, but eventually you'll be brought back here to Earth. This Earth planet is envisaged as a very special place because it's a place where I choose who or what I wish to be. I'm constantly offered, you know, like a mirror is held up to me all the time. Is this who you wish to be? Is this who you wish to be? Is this who I wish to be? What is it I want in life? So that person is then born on earth in a good and fortunate family, or a family of transcendentalists full of wisdom. Such a birth is hard to find in this world. And there, having been reborn into this world, your former divine consciousness is reawakened. You know, why is it that some of us find ourselves just instinctively attracted to the spiritual path, and others, majority of people, think, oh, what's that? You know, it's a mystery for me. It's a mystery which I've never fully understood. How is it that more people don't, you know, follow the spiritual path? It seems so obvious. But Krishna says that your former divine consciousness is reawakened and you strive further towards perfection. This spiritual seeker, carried effortlessly onward by the influence of former practice, passes beyond the conventions of religion. Religion in this world yeah, it's full of conventions and it's full of, you know, these ideas of right and wrong. But in yoga, ultimately, we pass beyond that. We learn in the Gita, and so that person eventually, you know, we continue to gain deeper and deeper understanding. And this chapter ends. The 6th chapter ends with this verse here, which I want us to chant together. At the end of this discussion, Krishna says, Yoginam api sarvesham, of all yogis, madgata antaratmana, the one whose thoughts dwell upon me, Shraddhavan bhajate yamam. Shraddha means faith, with faith, and devotion. Bhajate is devotion. Serving me with faith and devotion. Same yuktatamo mata. This I consider to be the yuktatamo means the height of yoga, you know, the perfection of yoga. I consider this. So let's sing this last verse of the 6th chapter. Yoginam api sarvesam, Yoginam api sarvesam, madgate antaratmana, madgate antaratmana, Shraddhavan bhajate yamam, Shraddhavan bhajate yamam, Same yuktatamo mata, Same yuktatamo. Arjuna, filled with confusion and doubt and fear, and turning to Krishna, please tell me what I should do. That moment of letting go. And here at this midpoint in the Gita, Krishna is saying, put your faith and your devotion in me. I'm the one that's maintaining everything. I'm the, you can say, the self of yourself, the Paramatma, the self within all. And that's the essence of yoga. So once more. Yoginam api sarvesham, Yoginam api sarvesham, madgate antaratmana, madgate antaratmana, Shraddhavan bhajate yamam, Shraddhavan bhajate yamam, Same yuktatamo mata, Same yuktatamo mata. Of all yogis, one whose innermost thoughts dwell in me, who faithfully serves me with devotion, I consider to be